if you think about it in life, like you go through your education, you go through your life, I think, how do I keep as many doors open as I possibly can? Well, when I've been running businesses, well, how do I keep as many doors open as I possibly can? Who will buy me? And then what will they buy me for? Because especially in the SME world, i.e. the outcome for shareholders, or the commercial outcome for shareholders, there's not really a multiple. You know, you can sort of adhere to some sort of multiple model, but actually it's what somebody will pay for it.
I think there's different types of control, and it sounds like there's like, I talk about the invisible control system, and I think these operating rhythms of quarterly check-ins, and particularly if you've got the right people, it's kind of building the trust, like how reliable are people to get it done, and so you build that trust over time.
And especially when you've got 11 people reporting into you, the ranking of performance is basically on trust, right? Because you have to learn that 90% of your vision is way better if somebody else is doing it than 100% of your vision, but you're doing it 4 times.
Hi, I'm James Johnson, founder and CEO coach, and this is the Peer Effect podcast, where your peers will tell you what's unlocking their 10 million plus business. Today, I'm joined by Alex, and we're going to find out what it takes to build your business to sell it, and what this means about building it differently. Before we get started, remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any episodes. Let's get started. So, Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So, when we're doing the research for this, you've done 3 successful exits, but only 1 successful cup final.
That's true. That is true.
Talk us through both.
Well, the successful cup final was Norwich City against Middlesbrough, 2000, and I might get this wrong, but I think 2015 playoff final at Wembley.
Nice.
But the other 9, I'm not such a good reader. I'm not an Arsenal fan, but I was in Budapest a few months ago as a group of Arsenal fans. I watched England in the Euros finals twice. I've been to the Rugby World Cup final. I was in Moscow when Kieran Trippier scored that goal. That was a great moment. The other 117 minutes were not so good. And the list goes on. The list just gets...
So like an albatross for sport, basically.
Exactly. I've seen lots of losses. So luckily, and we're recording this a day after England beat Mexico in the World Cup, I'm not going to America this year because one of my best friends is getting married. So
England might have a chance, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
But on the business side, you've had 3 successful exits.
Yes, I have a mix of businesses, but yeah, sold one to a sort of family office group, I suppose competitor-ish, but sort of a like-for-like sale, which was my first business company called GapCap. The joke is that the mandate was to make factoring sexy and lend lots of money. Do you think factoring is sexy?
So sexy.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, we definitely achieved both of those goals then. And we lent a fair amount of money. We would lend, free up the cash tied up between doing the work and getting paid on it, in a slightly more fintech way than it had been done before. And we sold that business into another lending business and kind of created a bigger group, which was good. Again, a kind of a long journey, first business venture, lots of things I would have done differently, but with a decent enough outcome. So that was good. And then subsequently, we've sort of bought some companies, shifted them operationally and then move them on. I would say that of the 2 that we've done subsequently, one is sort of mildly successful and the other one was like, I'm a crap business, get me out of here type thing. But we were able to do it without losing any money, which weirdly of the 3 I feel most proud of, I suppose, because it was good. But yeah, good. So
what's interesting is like, we're going to talk today about building to sell. Like, so now that you've done this 3 times, it's interesting. What are some things we say, like build to sell? What are the things that come to mind for you?
Just thinking about it all the time. Like what would, I know you always think about, like, if you think about it in life, like you go through your education, you go through your life, I think, how do I keep as many doors open as I possibly can? Well, when I've been running businesses, well, how do I keep as many doors open as I possibly can? Who will buy me? And then what will they buy me for? Because especially in the SME world, sadly, I'm not talking in the hundreds of millions here. And so therefore, actually, what somebody will pay for it, i.e. the outcome for shareholders, or the commercial outcome for shareholders is pretty much defined. There's not really a multiple. You can sort of adhere to some sort of multiple model, but actually it's what somebody will pay for it. So therefore you've got to keep as many doors open as you possibly can. The only way to do that is to make sure that you're thinking about it all the time. And I didn't do that the first time, but subsequently in the current iteration of businesses, I'm thinking about it all the time. I'm like, is that a good decision? Because does it shrink the amount of people that might be able to buy us, or does it actually expand the amount of people that might be able to buy us? And would it increase your multiple? You build a piece of tech, you're like, well, is there any value in this for a buyer? As it would be one of the questions you'd ask alongside all the normal rationale.
So I was going to start, let's say that sort of, if you have a North Star, sort of like our business purpose to X, and then you have sort of is this attractive to a buyer secondary, or is it actually primary to that?
That would be secondary, but you would definitely include it in decision making. We would. There's a couple of us in our team, and we would be thinking, is this a good decision for the end game here? And actually, to be honest, we're not always thinking about the end game. Okay. We're not. It's not like, oh, well, we'll build this tech because it means that we are now a fintech rather than just a fit. You wouldn't necessarily do that. But when you are thinking, well, what will we build? How will we build it? Well, okay, that might add some multiple, or it might open some doors to some new buyers, or actually if we can, let's also go for maybe launch an enterprise, let's risk X 100,000 on an enterprise sales division because we seem to be picking up some bigger customers by chance. Well, actually, is that risk a good idea or a bad idea? Well, one of the questions you'd ask yourself as well. Does it open more doors? If you can also show that you're doing enterprise sales as well as your SME sales, does that mean that you can suddenly be more attractive to buyer X as well as buyer Y? And we definitely would take that into account when we're thinking about, really high level strategy for sure.
Because I was the most extreme example of this I had was just talking to a founder, and they had a tech product, and they did their own implementation, and they realized that half their revenue came from the tech, half it came from implementation. And then he was like, his business has been going for about 3-4 years, and he realized that actually the buyer didn't care about the implementation thing. And implementation was like taking up more than half his time. And actually he outsourced all his implementation. He basically halved his revenue almost overnight because he thought actually when it comes down to sale and multiple, that was all waste effort, which actually played out as the case.
Well, good on him. But I think, those are the sort of decisions that, again, we've spoken about a little bit, but sort of focus, narrower is better, but also making sure that you're thinking about, what does success look like? Some people have a mission, and some people, and then alongside that, have a commercial mission. They're not necessarily the same thing, but if they're not aligned, you're probably screwed.
Yeah.
I've always been quite honest that I'd quite like to not be day-to-day chief exec of businesses, plural, or even singular, to be honest, after my 40th birthday.
Yeah.
And therefore, that gives you a bit of a timeline. We're quite open with that in leadership. In fact, we're open that across the whole business or group of businesses. And so therefore, that means one is you have to be thinking about making sure you've got the right team in place. Two, you have to make sure, well, does that mean an exit, or does it mean, just moving aside? Well, if you move aside, you've got to have a great team. If you exit, you've got to be set up to exit. And sadly, I'm not that far away from 40, so you really do have to be thinking about it. But keeping it front of mind, I think, is very important, and keeping as many doors open as you possibly can, and thinking, will this be accretive either for your multiple or for the who will buy you, I think is pretty key.
I want to come back to the beginning of how that starts. Is
that the Norwich City 2015 victory against Middlesbrough?
Well, launching a business, and what that means for you, in terms of how embedded it is. But I'm thinking about this let's say 40 deadline. Do you feel that ever puts you under a sense of rush?
No, it does now. It didn't when I started thinking about it. No, because everyone understands that that's flexible. Yeah. I think, you can't put a deadline on when this will be really done. It just is it's a want, not a need. And it just gives you a really tangible time frame. When you're building business plans, you don't fall off the edge of a cliff at the age of 4. Well, maybe you do, I don't know. You have to get there. But we've basically got 3 years. So therefore, you put in place a 3-year business plan. The year before that, we had a 4-year business plan. The year before that, we had a 5-year business plan. And so if you keep hitting your goals, you don't really need to extend that business plan out. And that can either be towards an exit. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that when you sell a company, you're not asked to stay on. I've had that problem once before where I have been asked to stay on and I'm not employable, unfortunately. And so, no, I don't think, in the short answer is no, I don't think it puts you on a rush. I think it puts you on a timeline. And so long as you're really clear that, look, it's a timeline to just what is coming next. And look, if it means I work 20 more years, but I'm more comfortable doing it either financially or that we've built such a great leadership team over that period that I can step away a little bit and I step away on my 43rd birthday, I'm cool with that. But I really think it gives you a focus and like gives you real clarity. And certainly, and also for the shareholders, the staff shareholders in our business, it gives them a bit of an end game. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of the staff shareholders are thinking, Christ, what job am I going to do after this? And you do have to do a bit of explaining to be like, well, the company doesn't disappear. And certainly I won't disappear on that day, but let's work towards that goal. And if it leaks one way or we get a really good offer on my 39th birthday, happy days.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, moving feast.
So let's say when you start the business then, has this been this time explicit from day one?
Yeah. And I suppose, so we have a group and the investment vehicle, so the company that sort of sits atop the group, the goal is to buy or build companies within the sectors that we're really comfortable in, make them as efficient as possible, scale them to a point that we would define, as you define the success, that's where you want to get to. And then you work towards that North Star, and every decision you make kind of goes towards that North Star. So across our group, we've kind of got different companies on moving at different paces, doing different things, different leadership, literally different jurisdictions of leadership, different involvement from me. There's various different things, but all the way through certainly each management team, and often all the way through to the ground floor, everyone will know that sort of you're working towards a 3-year plan. Definitely. They might not necessarily know. They probably don't know my age because I look so good for it, I reckon. But
22.
22, yeah. My sister said last night, she said, if I did Botox, I just want to lock in 29. I was like, well, you're like 4 years past that.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
So is every company within your sort of portfolio then, are they all on roughly the same timeline?
Yes, roughly. Mainly because the timeline is the same, not necessarily because their trajectories are the same. In fact, they're actively not the same. But we won't, probably during this cycle, between now and 4 to 3 years' time, we probably won't go and buy more companies, probably won't found any more businesses. And if we did buy companies, they would be plugins to our existing business to make them more valuable so that we would be able to either get an exit or be in a position where the businesses are of a value and the leadership team is of a value that you can sort of make the decisions for the next step. And I think they're all on the same time frame, but the time frame is the thing that's set, not the trajectory of the businesses. That's it is under your control, a lot of it, but it's not quite as controlled as the space-time continuum, which I can set that easily.
That's the thing you do. If you do a speech like in 10 years' time when you go, this was my master plan, this is how it all played out perfectly.
And here are my 42 businesses that I've failed to exit.
So how then do you, so if we look at sort of building to scale, so it's building sales, step one is kind of acknowledging that's what you're doing.
Definitely.
And having some form of timeline on it. And then having it as a question at the back of your mind as a secondary one, like, do I do this? Do I not? So it's a useful sort of decision criteria, prioritization thing.
Yeah, I think valuation as well, right? You've got to be thinking about, so you can set your timeline, but if you don't set a goal to that timeline and it's got to be achievable, you can't be like, well, we have an employer of record business, which hires great South African people into UK businesses. And if we said, we need 100,000 people working, and you're like, well, we're at 1,000 now. And it's like, well, we've got 3 years, let's go. It's totally unachievable. And so you've got to align, like they've got to align, otherwise you're mad. And also you've got to be thinking, well, what is it that we can do through that time to increase valuation, increase the commercial, increase the multiple, whatever you can do. I think the commercial side of it, if one of the missions is a commercial mission, like this is how much I want to make, or this is how much the company must be worth, or this is how much shareholders must return, whatever it might be, you must set that at the outset. And that's the key sense check, because if your number is 100 times where it is today and you're moving it, you're doubling year on year, I can say for free you're not exiting in 3 years' time for that number. And I think you making sure that those three are strategically aligned, or not even strategically, just do these match? Are we going to get to this number by this time? And are we thinking about it? And is there anything we can do here that will make this faster or whatever? Yeah, you can't do it without having that number or that whatever it is that you've got at that end as well.
Unless you follow your sister's approach and you have like 10 40th birthdays.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm 40 again this year.
Yeah, 29. Forever 29. Just another injection, I'm back. She's going to hate me.
So we've got sort of defining from the beginning what success looks like, saying it's important. What then do you think you do differently when you're running it to make it sellable?
I'm very, very focused at the moment, for example, in management teams. So I'm annoying. I'm undoubtedly a micromanager, or I'm not. There's so much going on that I'm totally absent and then a micromanager, and that must be a massive pain. So making sure that I don't manage teams, making sure that I manage a really good senior person that then manages teams, particularly, and we've got a big team in South Africa, a little team in India, medium-sized team here. Making sure that that is set up, I think, is really, really crucial. So if you're thinking about an exit, which you would be if you think about an exit, if you're thinking about an exit, and ultimately in boring businesses, that's different. And I run quite boring businesses. I'm not, sadly, not Anthropic, but companies like that can just go, gangbusters, and the infrastructure doesn't really matter as much because you go wild, you spend as much money as you can, and then you get bought out, or you do whatever, you list. Gain 50% in a day, whatever it might be. In a slightly more boring business like ours, making sure that you're as obsolete as you possibly can be. That's certainly my current focus, because it got quite big on us this year over the course of maybe the back end of last year, start of this year. We started looking at our group and thinking, Christ, well, I can't be involved in everything. The 3 or 4 kind of, I don't mean competent, that everyone else is incompetent, but the 3 or 4 maybe closest consigliaries to me couldn't be involved in everything. I think the team, that's the thing you've got to be thinking about all the time. And I probably at the start of this journey, this iteration of thinking about exit, plural, I probably neglected that a bit too much, and sort of let it roll, where I was like, well, I'll take care of team X and team Y and team Z. And I've got a really good manager who does team A. And it's like, well, yeah, but I've now got 3 teams, and if there's multiple companies, you've suddenly got 9 teams. You end up being like, well, how many people report into you? You're like, well, I don't know, 32. And you end up being like, well, okay, I've got quarterly review. I mean, we're literally in the midst of quarterly reviews at the moment, and I'm down to 11, but I was at 30.
Wow.
like that's a lot. And you've got to really think about people, because otherwise you're then not giving them the progression that they want, and, giving them the feedback that they want, and kind of doing them a bit of a disservice. It's like, well, you can't do that in 5 days. And then you think, well, it's 10 days or 15 days. Where you think, well, 15 days over the course of it, you do it 4 times a year, plus you've got your strategy stuff. How much time are you spending managing people? You're probably taking like 3 months of working time just managing your people. And then when somebody comes to buy you, they think, well, this guy, oh my God, how does he manage all these people? He must be either really good or really crap, depending on what they think. Then they're
let's lock him in for 3 years.
Yeah, so let's lock him in for 10, because So I think that's really, really important. That's a massive focus for me now, 3 years out, is making sure that when we hire people, maybe in the early days, budget means that you sort of have to really grow. You take on high potential people, and you sort of, it's not my first rodeo, so hopefully you kind of help to nurture and grow, and people step up. But now we're sort of thinking, well, actually we probably don't have time for that, so that would be a bit more rushed. Be like, right, will this person be really great? If we were a buyer now and we interviewed the leadership team, for example, would I, if I were buying this company, would I sit in front of this person and say, oh, this is a long-term, high talent quotient, engaged, but also still able to come in 3 years out from that and be part of the build. And therefore you might have to change your budgets a little bit. If
you had your time again, it's like you said you've come to this almost later than you would have done. Yeah. There's definitely this stage about bringing in people who can have enough impact within this time frame. What would you have done differently at the beginning?
we sort of landed on 4 or 5 people, particularly in we have a South African team of about 80 across our group. And we landed upon some really, really good people. But actually, it's really gratifying. It makes you sound like it's on me. It's not, it's on them. But they've sort of grown into their roles. So if you change it, they probably wouldn't have that space to kind of grow into their roles. So then when you either exit or you sort of change the business or move things, you maybe, I think loyalty is a rubbish word. Like you're not asking for loyalty. Like if people turn up to work and they get paid to turn up to work, like there's lots around that, but I don't really believe in loyalty. Like if you treat someone badly, they're going to leave, or they should. But you get the loyalty and the kind of brand identity and the company identity and the ways of working and the like, not necessarily what would Alex do, but what would the company do? What would we, how would we react to this sort of issue in the past? You kind of get that sort of robustness. And I suppose if we changed the way that we were working, we went for 15 really competent leaders at the start. One, maybe we wouldn't have the budget to go quite as quickly because you don't hire as many people on the ground. And two is that now that you start making tweaks as you do in any business, you maybe wouldn't have the sort of the grounding and the foundation of the people, not the lifers, but the people who've been there long term, who can be like, well, actually, last time we went through a restructure of our sales department, this was really important, or we screwed this up, so let's not screw that up again, or whatever it might be. So I think those are, whether I would necessarily change things, I'm not sure, but definitely it's got to be a focus now, because as the business grows and you really, there is possible exit on the horizon, because there isn't on day one. You really have to think about it. You have to be like, well, Christ, I really can't manage. I cannot have 11 managers reporting into me. That's wild.
So what I'm taking from that is that there's actually, if you did a retrospective framework on it, almost you say the early years you can take a bit more risk and go like plant your seeds of like high potential people. You don't know who's going to make it through, but you hope if you hire right, some people might, and that allows you to accelerate later. But at some point, there's this kind of time window. Like I need to have a management team or like key people identified, and if I bring people in, then I maybe don't have as much room to bring in plant seeds. It's now about planting like saplings rather than seeds.
I think so. I think so. And I think so. And actually, irrespective of my own timelines, there also is a business need as well, because you have a sales team of 12, young, energetic, I was going to say high testosterone, but they're not. There's a good mix of people, but the type. And you have that team. Well, actually, if I'm managing them, because they will take up a lot of my time because they're sort of A-type people, well, actually, I'm not sure the other part of the business will necessarily get my focus. But if that sales team was 2 or 3, well, maybe you wouldn't necessarily need a leader at that point, and you'd hope that someone would kind of come to the fore. But actually, in an early stage hierarchy, you can be as flat as you like and sow the seeds and water them, and again, take a lot of time. But everything now, I don't have the time to personally to sort of, everyone's has to be very self-driven if they're managed by me, and therefore it's a really high risk strategy to get a 23-year-old with a hugely high ceiling and just kind of hope, hit and hope, whereas you can do that in a much smaller enterprise. So I think that leadership function is really, really key, and I got that historically. I've learned my lessons there.
Because it sounds like the danger that you become the bottleneck, because you have like say large team, like there's a time cost even with 11, but certainly say a 30 direct reports, there's a lot of time cost. Even 11, that feels like,
oh yeah, it's got to be 3. Yeah.
How do you feel then that as a leader you would change, as you're building these managers and management teams, how do you feel that changes the way you would lead?
Well, to be honest, I've been quite a slow learner historically, because there's sort of I have one business where I'm kind of a co-founder, and he's more experienced than me and is happy to tell me how it is, which I enjoy, to be honest. In the other businesses, I'm definitely the founder, and the sort of the power balance is very much that I'm the boss, I suppose. But these guys are starting to be able to feed back to me. And actually, I've literally last week, I had a meeting with the group head of marketing, whatever job title it is, marketing manager, senior marketing manager, relatively new guy, experienced manager, came in from a not dissimilar sector where I'd grown through this company, got to like been part of the build, then was part of the execution, and then wanted to move on for whatever reason it was. And I picked up the phone to him and he said, look, you give really good feedback, but if you can stop slacking me and my team, that'd be great. I was like, sure. And he's like, because everyone jumps. If you say jump, they start jumping. And I'm trying to run a function here, and I'm trying to run a function that can scale and grow. And I think that that's not the first time I've been told that, but hopefully it'll be the last. I really think, like, if you bring these people in where you maybe pay them a little bit more, or you hire a bit more experience, or you kind of got to at least take the risk that you've got the hire right and give them that empowerment to be able to do it, and therefore communicate with them in a way that is sort of appropriate to the level that you're trying to get the business to. And so just last week, he sort of said that to me. He's like, please stop slacking me and my team. Certainly change your Slack from an enter to a control enter, so that you just send one big thing rather than like, hi, how are you? And I was like, thank you very much for the feedback.
And please remove the cap locks as well.
Yeah. Please just stop being a twerp.
But continue the memes. The memes are great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you just keep thumbs upping us, that's fine. Like, call us out on the weekly call, but then apart from that, just leave me alone.
I have come to believe that actually the biggest gift you can give your team is 3 months certainty.
Okay.
Obviously stuff changes, but I think if you can give them 3 months certainty, they can really focus on doing their job. And if the leaders, you can get like 3 months out.
By 3 months certainty, what do you...
Like, if they know what they're going to be doing for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
Then, and like, the priorities aren't going to change. You're not going to have a good idea. And like, I gave one of my team a twitch, I think. I just come on Monday morning and go, I've had a great idea over the weekend. And she's like, thanks. I hate your ideas.
Yeah.
Like, because what it really means is you're kind of like, you're jerking the steering wheel kind of on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Although I think the thing I do struggle with, without a doubt, is feeling a bit out of control. And I think that is the founder business leader characteristic, and certainly stereotypical characteristic, is that you are a massive control freak. I definitely am, and have been. And through my companies, it has undoubtedly been a constrictor of growth. But I'm not sure I would change it necessarily, which is weird, because I think that's like the more I think about it, the more kind of mature I get, the more experience I get, clearly, the more obvious it becomes that you are the bottleneck here. As you sort of build a business, what I've definitely learned is there's got to be a point to do that. And I wouldn't say, even though I've had these kind of exits, the first one, I never gave that up, ever. And then was tied in for 3 years, found out I was unemployable after about 15 minutes, and lasted less than a year, less than half of that, which left a load of money on the table, a load of opportunity on the table. I sort of did it quite petulantly as well. Like, I didn't fall out with anyone, but I certainly could have sat there and done the employee thing for a little bit had I not. But because I was very control freaky, I suddenly was like, well, hang on, I'm supposed to make those decisions. So, yeah, but we've now got a team of 15 marketing people, so you don't need to make that decision. You can shut up, and being told that was quite tricky. But I think there's like learning that is something, and I think it's very easy to sit opposite you and say, well, I've learned that. Well, I definitely haven't. I definitely don't execute on that every day, for sure. But yeah, that's like empowering people, giving them the certainty, giving them the clarity. And also they have to be able to drive that too. So putting in the structures to sort of say, okay, right, we're at the end of a quarter now, what are we, the middle of July? We've done our quarterly reviews, apart from me, but most people have done their quarterly reviews. We do a quarterly like strategy document and a monthly report for all through the business for each operating company or each kind of big department. So sales, operating company 1 would be a big department. And you've got some changes, you get a to-do list, you then go and kind of do it. You have to be able to sort of see that, as a control freak, you have to see that work a couple of times with somebody else executing it. And that does mean getting involved. And I suppose a big part of that is then the relationship you've got with the person leading it. And certainly in one of our operating companies, I've got a really great relationship with the guy. We get on really well. His weakness is probably like, he's not very good with a blank sheet of paper. My weakness is I'm not a completer finisher. Perfect. like it works really nicely. I say one of my weaknesses. And so that sort of thing, we sat in my house, sat in the garden on one of those roasting days, whilst my small child was asleep and the nanny was sick, we sat in the garden and we put together a strategy, and now we wrote it down. I wrote it down. He added to it, and he will go and execute on that. But it'll be the first time that he will be truly kind of leading that. And I feel deeply uncomfortable, to be honest. So we'll see how that goes.
But I think that's, I mean, I think there's different types of control. And it sounds like there's like, I talk about the invisible control system. And I think these operating rhythms of quarterly check-ins, and particularly if you've got the right people, it's kind of building the trust, like how reliable are people to get it done? And so if you build that trust over time.
Yeah, and especially when you've got 11 people reporting into you, you almost can kind of like, the ranking of performance is basically on trust, right? Because almost, you have to learn that 90% of your vision is way better if somebody else is doing it than 100% of your vision, but you're doing it 4 times because you're constricting somebody in their management leadership role, and it's probably taking 5 times as long.
Yeah.
And I definitely learned that lesson. It's just a case of how do you be really consistent on that without having, certainly from my perspective, like, at what point do you end up having a heart attack because you go in and look at something and it's at 70% rather than 90%. You're like, oh my God, we're going bust tomorrow. Like, which I think, again, that's part of the course, isn't it? Like if you run companies, you're going bust every day, I'm pretty sure. Like,
I do think running a company, it's kind of like, it could almost fall apart. Like I think you think, just if these 3 things happened in a row, it could all fall apart. And it's just amazing that you run it for like 5 years and those 3 things never happen in a row. And if they do happen, actually it requires 4, 5, and 6. And it's like,
wasn't Trump and Truss like sort of 6 months apart? Like if we're going to survive, like these
survive them.
Yeah, these enormous like political booms like this. I mean, this year you have Iran, you have. What does that do? Like we have a business that is a debt advisory company. So a lot of the success is based upon appetite for funding, like companies that want funding, and appetite for lending, i.e. the companies that are doing the lending and their appetite. Well, I can tell you for free that 15 minutes after the Ayatollah is bombed into what is not a submission, you are thinking, oh my God, like the whole thing is going to go to pot here. But we didn't panic. You have to be it's a very sporting analogy. Hopefully in the next final that I don't go to, you don't get too high and you don't get too low. And I do think that's a big lesson. And certainly I've learned that over time, is not to be quite such a sharer in the office. That's like, oh my God, can you believe, this Iran thing is going to mean that interest rates do this and the oil price does this and logistics companies are going bust. And oh my God, like the less of that you can share and the more like, no, trust the process, keep doing this. Like we know that we're going to be okay. And these things last a matter of months and we've got a good company. So in a few months' time, which it has, it will flip around. And the pent up, people still need money, the pent up desire, the pent up need to lend because you've got LPs, it will just free up the capital system again and it will be okay. And like you kind of got to do that, I think, a bit. And certainly too high, too low is a big lesson. First 5 years, not so much.
How do you combine, let's say, to sort of wrap up the building to sell and the team? Do you find that clarity helps with the team? Like if allowing you to step back, making you sort of not the bottleneck is the goal to help you build on this vision, do you find this of setting the scene, all right, this is what we're doing, helps with that or hinders it?
I'll tell you in 6 months. I don't know. I assume it would help it actually, because that's what we've done. I don't know. I'd like to think it will help. And again, I think people like clarity, even if the answer is the answer they don't want. People want that answer. I think the moment you create any opaqueness, people panic. And we've got some people in our business that are remote working, and if you create any level of any lack of clarity at all, you almost go to, like, productivity on the floor, sort of the gossip, so to speak, and everyone gossips in the office, but you normally walk around the office and you have a bit of a gossip, you grab your coffee and you're back to your desk. If you're remote, you're doing it, you're thinking about it, you're beating yourself up about it, and you're having a phone call. And because we've got a little bit of, like, because of the way we've put the businesses together, we've got a few people like that, and then they end up in a bit of trouble themselves because they think, oh my God, like, what happens if this, and you're like, what a lesson, like just be as clear as you possibly can, even if the answer is no, and I think that definitely stands you in good stead. And I think that's from the cleaner through to the managing director for sure. Like, it has to be.
What about when you're hiring? Are you explicit on this when you're hiring as well?
Not so much. By this, you mean we're thinking about exit, and I think we're quite explicit that that the business will be built to exit. Like, certainly when we're hiring leaders, we wouldn't, you hire a social media intern, you wouldn't necessarily talk about the 5-year strategy. But again, we're not necessarily building it to exit it. We're building it for me to exit it. And that doesn't mean the business disappears. And actually exiting it doesn't mean the business disappears. Like our intern in our first business, Danny, she's the last woman standing in the company that we then sold, and that's 6 or 7 years on, plus the 4 or 5 years that she had, and she's probably 12 years into her job there, and she came in as a 16-year-old kind of intern. So it doesn't, like, longevity doesn't disappear and stability doesn't necessarily disappear with an exit of sorts or a realization moment or, some sort of event. And that's probably a really good example of it. But explaining that to people maybe who aren't in leadership, haven't necessarily been through cycles with businesses before, that's a bit tricky. And we'd never lie to people, but we wouldn't, sat here talking about it, we wouldn't ever lie to people. But I think that you wouldn't necessarily interview somebody for a social media management job and be like, hey, we've got 3 more years, because they'll be like, well, what about my career? Which obviously isn't the case, but 3 more years for this iteration of the business, so that the current chief exec or director can make a decision around the value proposition of that company and what the next stage is. So therefore it's more like setting like hurdles for that time frame, I suppose.
It's quite an interesting distinction. Like, sort of, it's not, say, the business exiting, it's you exiting.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like sort of a refunding round of sort of private equity. It's kind of like, we're going to go through an event. It's not really changing anything other than maybe leadership and some of the way it's funded.
Maybe. I'd like to see how it plays out, to be honest. I'm sure, honestly, in 5 years' time, I'll still be sat doing the same thing. And I'm not scared of that. But I do think setting really clear time-related, value proposition-related exit goals, because it will an exit is also a decision, right? You make a decision. You have agency through that entire process, from before you even get an offer on the table all the way through to the end. You have the decision to be like, I'm out of here. Like, I don't fancy this deal. And actually, I think where we talk about an exit, it's just the easiest way of saying, I would like to be in a position where we can start making decisions, which means that you've got to get the business to this sort of size. And that means either you can sell it, I can step back, we can promote somebody internally, we can do this, we can do that. Like, you can make a raft of new decisions at that point in time. But exit is probably the best way to characterize that, because it's the easiest way to explain it to as many people as you can, I think.
And what if founders listening, what's the one thing after listening to this that you think they could do around this would be the most helpful? I
think a clear mind, like set a time. If you want to exit, because, I mean, in my case, it's that I don't have, I hate the word bandwidth, but I'm about to use it twice. The bandwidth to have a young family and be as present as I want to be, and have a growing business and be as present as I want to be. I don't do both of them at the moment. And I certainly do not have a social life. My fitness is in the dogs. So you can't have a life that is necessary. And I'm ambitious enough to think, and I think pragmatic enough to think, that you need the capital to be able to go and live your life however you want to. Clarity is the key thing. And it doesn't have to be an exit. It doesn't have to be something. It's just be clear about where you want to go. What does success look like? Why does success look like that? And what's the time frame around that? And is that realistic? And if it is, then keep as many doors open as you can, whatever that looks like.
That's a great summary. I would normally summarize, but actually, I think you've nailed it.
Is that because it's flashing?
Alex, thank you so much for coming on today. And this is going to be very helpful for people listening.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Such a good episode today with Alex. I really love the insight about clarity and just being really clear on what success looks like. An exit doesn't necessarily mean selling, but just as a state of mind, thinking about what's going to add value. Really helpful. Remember, hit subscribe. Send us any messages at hello@peer-effect.com. We'll see you next Monday for a Peer Effect Postbag episode, or Wednesday for another founder episode. Happy scaling, and thanks for listening.